New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. And I have been really having some high energy today, looking forward to this conversation with this particular guest. But before I get to that, if you're here for the first time, I'm really glad that you found us, and I'm glad that you're here today, especially for today's conversation. And if you're back, if you're a regular guest here on Growing Edge Live, I'm so happy that you're here. I think you'll be delighted by today's topics and today's guest and the deep dive that we are about to encounter. So we have conversations here at the Growing Edge with soul-centered individuals that channel their time, their talent, their energy, their resources, their creativity, their love into doing good work in the world, really, really making a difference. And I have conversations with a broad spectrum of people from various different walks of life. And so it's always exciting to see the diversity and see through the eyes of the different people that come onto the show and share about their life, their background, how they got to be who they are, and to also share the work that they do in the world. And so I'm really thrilled today to have my friend Denise Dolan. And Denise there she is, for those of you that are watching. She's beautiful, and she'll tell you where she is because she's long distance from me. I'm here in northern Utah. And where are you, Denise?
I am in the Algarve in Portugal.
Yes, a long way away. And so Denise is an amazing friend of mine. She's someone that has really supported me through a lot of different chapters of my life, ups and downs, and now we're dealing with a friendship that is so deep and so loving and so supportive. And so thank you for always being there for me and our friendship.
Thank you. And likewise, I feel the same. It's really beautiful to have a friendship with you on such a deep soul and heart level, and I appreciate that. And thank you for inviting me on to speak with you and your viewers today.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been wanting to have you on for a couple of years, and it seems like you've had so much going on in your life that we've never really found a good time, but today's perfect. And so I know you as a friend. I also know you as someone that has studied a lot of things that I'm interested in. You are a science of mind or a new thought practitioner and minister. You also are a teacher of ancient wisdom. You coach, you guide, you're a medium, which is just such a fun, wonderful part of who you are and how we connect and how we initially connected. And so we'll talk about that. But before we dive into the work you're doing now, what was your childhood like and upbringing? And have you always been interested and curious spiritually, or is that something that came later on?
No, it is something that began quite when I was quite young, actually. I grew up in a traditional sort of, blue collar household. And from a very young age, I found myself very curious about what I would now call spirituality, not necessarily religion or religious dogma. And I was really thirsty to, even as, I mean, I'm talking as a very young child, I was really thirsty to engage in meaningful dialogue about what happens after we die and different things. I had no fear of death and wanted to engage in dialogues, and nobody was very much interested in reciprocating that with me. And I remember as a kid one time just having this inspiration to share out of the blue with my parents that, there's nothing to be afraid of when we die. And it's like the excitement that you feel when you're waiting online to get onto a roller coaster. And it's like, you might feel a little nervous and butterflies in your stomach, but once you get on the roller coaster, it's so much fun. And that wasn't a very good analogy for my dad because roller coasters. My mom likes them. But I just remember never really getting a response back about, such topics that I brought up. And there were several things that happened. I remember, I grew up along the New Jersey shore. And one weekend, my parents brought me and my brother to Seaside Heights Boardwalk. And we stopped at one of these like spin the wheel kind of things where you put your money on a name or a number. And then if it lands on that, you win a prize. And I was so adamant. I didn't know a single person by the name of Liz. And again, I was very young. We're talking younger years in elementary school. And I just wouldn't let up on my parents. I kept insisting, put it on Liz, put it on Liz. And finally, my dad just, put a coin on Liz, and Liz won. And then I won a prize. And he was like, he called me Dee Dee. He goes, Dee Dee, how did you know that? Why did you say to put it on Liz? And I was just like, I just knew it was going to win. I don't know. But as it turned out, that day was the death date of my dad's Aunt Liz. And they realized it as we were walking away. My mom and dad were like sort of chattering, like, how did she know that? How did that? And then it occurred to them. They said, wait a minute, today is the day that she passed. She passed when I was 3 months old. I never, or I don't think I ever met her. I don't remember if I did. So there were things like that, that just happened in kind of background mode. And I was really curious about it. And I thought, well, I really wanted a spiritual mentor. I wanted a teacher. And that kind of thing just didn't really exist. I was raised Catholic, and, I didn't go to Catholic school, but I went to a weekly catechism class, and we didn't learn the Bible because I thought, well, maybe the Bible would help me tune in a little bit, but I didn't understand a word of it, and it wasn't actually talked about in my catechism class. So, so I really felt a deep thirst that was not responded to and not answered. And instead, I ended up kind of shifting my focus to, my dad used to say, because we always had enough, we had what we needed, but there was always, focus to make sure that we had enough money for things. And I remember my dad telling me, you can be anything you want. Don't do what I did. Go get an education, start your own business, make money, be profitable, and then everything will be okay as long as you have money. And so what I realized is that narrative, that mantra kind of took over. So that inner thirst never left me, but I shifted my focus to doing exactly, what he had suggested that I do. And I made sure I got an education and started my own business. And, different paradigms, like new paradigm shifts, that's been something that's always been kind of in my spirit, and even the business that I started, I co-founded the US division of a multinational consulting firm. And even that was about a brand new paradigm of how to do business differently. And so I find that inside of my core, I have this deep desire to really learn and teach and guide about new paradigms or different paradigms that aren't necessarily in the mainstream. And I ended up leaving eventually that business. I made a decision to focus on things more spiritual. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't something that was in my mind. It wasn't a mental thing. I was making money. I was very good at what I did. I was trying to justify staying, but in my meditations and in my spirit, I kept getting, no, there's something deeper calling you. So there were a lot of deeper things that were calling me. So it seemed like when I hit my early 30s, there was just an explosion of kind of spiritual teachings and teachers and, practices. And I just sort of flowered and just opened up to, studying a lot of different practices. But
yeah, I have a question. When you had that first experience in New Jersey with Liz, and did that continue over these years as you were growing up and starting your business? Did you explore that? Like, why do I know things? What is this? How did that sort of come more to the forefront?
Yeah. Yes, a lot of things happened, actually. I didn't know how I knew things, nor did I think it was unusual. I just thought everybody did, because it was such a certainty. It wasn't like I was doubting myself. It was just like, no, of course Liz is going to win, But the other things that started happening were, as I started to get older, I noticed a frustration in, why is it that sometimes when I'm communicating and I just know something, other people are questioning why I might be bringing up a particular topic when it seems so obvious. And I found it a bit confounding and a bit confusing and even frustrating at times, until I realized, with wisdom and time, that because I really am tuning into something that many people may not be tuning into. And so I had to learn how to sort of back that up and really be very aware and heartful as to the things that I talk about, what I bring up, and how I bring them up. And one of the things that happened when I was very young, when I was 9 years old, my cousin Chucky was 21 years old, and he passed in a car crash. And it was a very traumatic thing for the whole family to experience and endure. And later that year, I was walking home from school alone, and I took the longer route, which was very unusual. I didn't do that. Probably, I used to love walking through the woods in the field, but it had probably rained or something the day before, and it was too swampy. So I took the long route along the street. And this wasn't with my outer eye, but it was like my inner peripheral vision. I felt the presence of my cousin Chucky, but in my inner eye, he was appearing next to me as if he was walking with me. Mm. And I was delighted, because I thought, wow, if when people, quote, die, if there's still access to them, that's great, because I have more access now than I did before, because he lived in a different state. So we just had a very short, simple dialogue. It was just him reassuring me and letting me know that he was okay. He wanted all of our loved ones to know that he was okay. And he was just so kind and so nice and so loving towards me, and how nice it was, for him to see me and talk with me. And there was a part of my mind then that doubted. And I said, Chucky, I believed it. I knew it was real. But then there was another part of me thinking, wait a minute, how do I know this is real? Maybe I'm crazy. I mean, I was only 10 or 11 years old at this point, right? And I said, you have to give me a clear physical sign that this is really you. So he, sort of said goodbye. I walked home, and at the foot of the driveway, when I walked in to my house, at the foot of the driveway, lying diagonally across the bottom of the driveway, was a pogo stick. And the reason why this is significant is because we were not allowed to leave our bicycles, our toys, anything in the driveway, because it's sort of sloped down. And, one of my parents, they could back up over one of our things. So it was just not allowed. We put things away. And I thought, well, why would the pogo stick be out? I'm just getting home from school. I hadn't seen the thing in a while because it was given to me as a Christmas gift years earlier. But the year it was given to me, Chucky and his family came for Christmas that day. And I didn't know how to use a pogo stick. And he taught me how to use it. And he taught me so well that I used it as transportation around the neighborhood. I would bounce my way around to friends' houses and things like that. So it was very unusual because I went running in the house and asked my mother, my father, my brother, like, who put the pogo stick there? Where did the pogo stick come from? And nobody knew what I was talking about. And so that was confirmation for me in my own spirit that, wow, okay, this really is the way that it is, And that was a life-changing experience.
And how did you talk to your parents or your siblings about this? Was this something that you shared with them, or was this just information for you? And
yeah, I did share with them that I had this experience, and a few years later, a close family member shared to a neighbor who had come over in front of me that anybody who thinks that they can hear or talk with people who are no longer alive should be committed to a psychiatric ward. And that really scared me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think or know that I didn't think there was anything wrong. I thought it was beautiful, actually. I thought it was wonderful, the experience that I was having. And so after that, I never brought it up until my early 20s. Yeah. So there was probably a 9 or 10 year gap where I never mentioned it again.
Mm. Okay. So we'll come back and touch on this some more, but I want to hear about your journey as a young adult, and because I know your story, but I'd love people to know the things that you're interested in and what you've learned along the way.
Mm. Well, yeah, as a young adult, there was kind of like a split, as I started to mention, whereby because of the feedback that I heard about spirit and being tuned in or being aware, which was perfectly natural for me. And then I tended to focus more on the 3D physical world of, okay, getting a degree, making money, starting a business, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? But what was happening in parallel to that as a young adult, my maternal grandmother passed when I was 22 years old. And she came to me in a pure visitation about 40 days or so after she passed. And she gave me some very concrete information that was very clear. And she also gave me very specific messages to share with my mom and with her husband, my grandfather. And when I did, I remember my mom becoming very emotional and questioning how I could know such a thing, because nobody knew some of the things that she had shared with me. And again, I was just like, because grandma told me, it was very clear, like, what's so difficult to understand about that? So that happened. So I think that started to kind of shift my own perspective, about things. And there was another experience I had that this will lead to answer your question. I had a dream about one of my friend's fathers. I never met her father. He had passed in a helicopter explosion. He worked on an oil rig off the coast of Africa. And this was an extremely traumatic event because the helicopter crashed upon takeoff. They never found the body of my friend's father. And this was so traumatizing for the family, they never spoke about it. But the one thing I did know is that they had to wait 7 years before they could legally declare him dead, before anything could be resolved with the estate and all of that. And so in this dream, there was nothing scary about the dream. It was just a different kind of experience and a different kind of connection. He was very clear to me visually, his voice, the way he looked, the way he dressed. He was holding a martini glass in his hand. I mean, these were very specific details. And the part that was a little unnerving to me was, it was like there was this boundary, just a mystical sort of gray, and there was lots of life and laughter and light happening way in the background. But it was almost as if like he came to the edge of where I was, and energetically and almost like telepathically, literally pulled me in. So I was just on one side of the line and he was on the other. And he was actually very annoyed with me. He said, I have been waiting for you. He didn't tell me his name, nothing. I just knew who he was. And I knew it was their father. I never saw a picture of him. I mean, this was like a hands-off topic, And he said, I want you to tell my wife and my daughter and my son that I am okay. I'm with them. I'm watching them. I'm with them. I'm watching over them. Tell them, don't forget, don't let me down. You've waited too long. I've waited too long for you to deliver this message. And I just remember being I think there must have been something nerve-wracking about being so close to this Ed, because it was so unfamiliar to me. But it wasn't like there was anything scary about him or the message or anything. And I remember just saying, okay. He was very commanding. And I knew in my spirit I was not going to say a word to my friend because I didn't want to upset her. And he sensed this. And he said, I'm warning you. Tell her, tell them. And I was like, okay. And I woke up in such a sweat. I remember I got up and I got a glass of water. I went back to bed and he came back in the dream again and said, don't forget about me. But I was too cowardly. I was too afraid of upsetting her. And 7 years went by. And I met her in New York City where she lived for dinner. And we sat down at a little two-top table and she said, Dee, all of my sense of religion has been shot to hell. I remember that's exactly what she said. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're not even religious. How could it be? And she said, I was so close with my dad. If there was an afterlife, he would have found a way to connect with me, and he never did. And I was like, oh no. So I was like, okay, I think I was 28, 29 years old at that time, and I said, well, just take this with a grain of salt. I did happen to have a dream, and I described his voice. I described him, and she was just like, Dee, that's my father. You're talking about my father. And then I received a thank you card from her and her mother and her brother thanking me and saying how it had just helped to lift the weight of the world off their shoulders, having this information. And that was a turning point for me because I recognized at that age, I guess it was 29, that I would not hold a message anymore out of fear. And I would ask people if they wanted it, but I wouldn't hold it back. And so that's how my life proceeded. So I was living, leading this very sort of traditional, conventional life. And of corporate world. I was the co-founder of this company in the United States. And this other awareness was really quickening. And I was having experiences all the time. And I mean, all the time. I mean, like, I couldn't turn it off. It was everywhere. I could be in the supermarket. I could be on the beach. I could be anywhere. And there were, spirit beings, loved ones asking me, please give this message to this person, please, And then I finally had to learn how to set it off, how to turn that off, but not turn it off completely, where I could actually just access it at will. And what really helped me with that was I met in a class, one of my corporate clients dragged me to this Develop Your Psychic Ability class, and I had no desire to go. I went. There was a significant experience that I had there in front of everyone. And these beautiful women were there. Again, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and they waited for me after the class, pulled me aside, and they said, we know that you have this ability. We've studied in England. We get together once a week and we try to help people. We would love to help you cultivate your ability. And I was terrified, and we didn't have cell phones back then, but I decided to go. And I thought, okay, if I go and I'm scared or it's weird, I can just leave. I don't have to stay. And I ended up meeting with them every week for 7 years. And it was extremely validating and affirming, because we sat in a circle, and the idea is you just share whatever you're receiving. And so I would start to see something. I remember the first thing was I saw a woman dressed in a red dress, and she had a red hat. And somebody else said, there's a woman here with blonde hair and a red dress and a red hat. And it was extremely validating and affirming. So that was very helpful. And that work just continued to deepen. And then I eventually made a decision that I would leave the corporate world. It was a hard decision. It took me 2 years to really become courageous enough to make that decision. And from then on, life just really opened up. I mean, I learned about a healing practice called Jinshin Jitsu, which is an ancient Japanese practice. It's like acupuncture without needles, and it's hands-on. You listen to the pulses. And I became again, the same corporate client who brought me to that psychic development class where I met the women, she's the one who brought me to this Jinshin Jitsu class. It was offered in the hospital. It was a 40-hour program, the first part. And it was a life-changing event for me. So I started practicing that. And when I gave my partners notice that I was leaving Unipower, this corporate, business that we had started, philanthropists hired me to bring Jinshin Jitsu into the local hospitals in New Jersey. So I worked with the team of regional practitioners, and we met with like the head of oncology, and it was my job to try to explain to them what this healing modality is and how it can work, and which doctors around the country had been working with it and the success that they were having with it. And it was so easy. They just agreed. They said, this is a no-brainer, and we need all the help we can get, especially in New Jersey for women with breast cancer. And this was 24 years ago, and it's still being offered in the hospital systems there. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So, and during those sessions, I started getting information for people who were on the table, and I wouldn't say anything while they were on the table, but when we were done and they were sitting or standing, I remember there's so many of them, but I remember one woman came to me. It was her first time. And during the session, there was a woman sitting next to her, and I really believed it was her mother, but I didn't say that. And instead I said, who is Sarah, when the session was over? And she was like, that's my mother. And she said, I'm pregnant, and that's what we're naming my baby, after my mother, Sarah. And she's like, how did you know that? And I said, I didn't really know anything. I said, there was just a presence, a very, very loving feminine presence sitting here with you who just kept saying Sarah and wanted me to share that with you. So I had to let people know during the Jin Shin Jitsu sessions that was not part of Jin Shin Jitsu. That wasn't part of the training. It wasn't part of the practice. That was just something that was coming through with me. And from there, I just couldn't get enough. I mean, I studied with Don Miguel Ruiz with his work, and one of his first apprentices, Gary Van Warmerdam, did that for many years and became authorized to teach that work by Don Miguel Ruiz himself. And met Dr. Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, and started flying out to Agape to learn from him every week, and went to all the meditation retreats there, and just really opened up a lot of doors. I ended up meeting a teacher from India, Anand Mehrotra, with Sattva Yoga, and I lived there in 2015, and just really started adding and synthesizing this work together to work with my clients and in my own life. And I don't ever offer guidance or teachings about anything that I myself have not experienced firsthand, or that hasn't worked for me myself. So yeah, it's been a little challenging in the world we live in to synthesize, like to come up with a name or a phrase for what I do. But the two things that are really in my awareness in a very strong way right now is really supporting people. Like, we started a project, which is part of how you and I met, the Bridging Loss Healing Project, where I offered complimentary sessions to people who had lost a loved one. I don't know if you want me to go any further.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a really short break? We're at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll come back and we'll dive into how you have synthesized all of these wonderful teachings and modalities and the work you do with Bridging Loss Healing Project. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, Here's Allie.
And we're back with Denise Dolan, my friend. So Denise, you're sharing so many interesting things. I want to stop and ask you millions of questions, but I am not, because I want to hear you share about how you synthesized all of this and the work you do now, and who do you work with? Like, who is your client?
Mm-hmm.
And what is most exciting for you at the moment?
Yeah. So my clients come from all different walks of life, all ages, all walks of life. The ones who come for mediumship is really to, I guess, for all the reasons that, when we experience the passing of a loved one who we were very close with, and there can be a lot of grief, there can be sometimes guilt, there can be questioning, and sometimes there were things that they would have liked to have shared that they didn't have a chance or an opportunity to share, on either side, actually. And those sessions are always so uplifting and inspiring. There is never any fear. There's never any gloom and doom. They're just very uplifting and inspiring. And in many cases, what has happened after somebody sits with me for a session, I not only do I receive messages, but I can see an energetic transmission happening. So a loved one who comes through, or my client's loved one who would come through, I can see them just beaming, emanating an energy. And sometimes words will be repeated or phrases, and it isn't because the person sitting hasn't heard it. It's because there's an energetic transmission happening that is very deeply healing. And every single time I've heard the same thing when somebody asks me, well, how can I connect with my loved one? Because they're always there, and it's the same answer all the time. I'm here all the time. I'm accessible anytime. And so very often what happens is people who have sessions with me are able to have their own connection, where they don't have to come to me or anybody, that they really begin to trust their own connection with their loved one. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, there have been almost partnerships where the person in physical form is working with guidance from or with the person who is no longer in physical form. And so they continue on with, with this sort of partnership, if you will. And that's really beautiful, because I've had people come to me in such deep, deep grief who have actually done a 180. And I didn't even realize how helpful or beneficial these sessions were until some clients started offering testimonials. And my husband thought we should have somebody come in and help record them. And it was very emotional and very moving. I really didn't know how, because for me, this has just been a part of my life. And I really didn't comprehend or understand what the impact was of these sessions and what they can be.
Yeah, well, to speak to that, that's how you and I met. We were introduced by one of my dear friends, and we had just lost our son a couple of years prior to us meeting. And you and I think I was your first client on this project, the Bridging Loss Healing Project. I mean, maybe I wasn't, but that's what I seem to remember. When
you might, it might be.
When I went to your website and I read about this project, and I think it said something to the effect of wanting to speak to people that had lost a loved one through accidental overdose or overdose and suicide. And I've always been have this feeling of nervousness when I think about, having a conversation such as that. But I felt you and I talked on the phone ahead of time, and I felt such a connection with you, and such a sense of rightness. Like this was the natural thing to do. Like this, on the path of my life, this was the obvious step to take down this path with you. And so we met, we did a session, you channeled my son, and we had, an amazing experience. I went on to have my husband meet with you and my daughter-in-law meet with you. And I sent several friends your way because they too had lost a loved one. And that was several years ago now. And so I know the impact it's had on me and my family, my daughter, who has been, I live with my daughter lives with me, and so she's been very close to hearing about this connection that's been created with Adam, my son, and so I know the impact on our family, and I would love to hear about this project and the other people that you spent time with. I think you did 20 or so sessions with clients for this. Well, not clients, but people with this project. And I'd love to hear more about that, because I know it made such a difference for us and others. And so connecting with our loved ones is possible, and it's so helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Ali. Yes, and you might have been the first one. I actually don't remember. I offered sessions, complimentary sessions, and my curiosity or my inspiration was to see if there were universal messages that we could put together from loved ones to help, because this has been such a growing problem in the American culture and others, with these accidental overdoses and increases of, suicides of young people in particular, can be all ages. And my inspiration was that to see if we could synthesize some messages. And it's such a hard thing, because I think for the most part, people just really want to make their own connection with their own loved one. And that project, it isn't over, in the sense that my commitment was to work with at least 20 people. And I'm still available to do that for people who have lost a loved one to a suicide or an accidental overdose. I still offer complimentary sessions to them. And my hope is that my husband and I have moved a lot in the last few years since I met you. We moved overseas, but we had to make an interim move in between that. So over the last 3 years, we've moved 3 times, and now we are settled, and I'm really happy and feeling grounded, and just ready to launch into. So I think we're going to see where the Bridging Loss Healing Project goes from here, because it's far from over, it's far from complete, and I think there are so many people who could use the support. And along those lines, I've had a number of people, which is so troubling to me, I've had a number of people come to me and tell me that they worked with a medium to connect with their loved one who passed in such a way, and that they were given a very negative, fearful reading, and I just find that horrifying, because that has never been my experience, and it just seems, I don't know where that comes from, but it's really an honor to provide these sessions for people who are in that space, because they are so inspiring and they are so uplifting. And we might not be able to locate our loved one in a physical form in a specific geographical location, but we can always access the consciousness of that person. And I really believe that our loved ones guide their loved ones in physical form to me, whether it's through a referral or, there were lots of therapists in the States who were sending me, their patients, their clients. And I do believe that it's our loved ones who were doing the work, guiding us to one another. And yeah, it can be life-changing. So I feel passionate about that work. And it's always been hard for me because I'm not this airy-fairy kind of person, despite, a lot of experiences that I've had. I'm very grounded, very logical. I'm very scientific. I'm extremely skeptical, actually. And so it's always been really uncomfortable for me to let people know, oh, yes, I can, I've never referred to myself really as I'm a medium. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that culturally, there's been a lot of stigma associated with that. And yet I have worked with people from all walks of life, from all religious beliefs, non-religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, and they have always been very healing.
Yeah. Well, I know people can connect with you if this message or if this project is interesting to them. And I'd like to shift gears a little bit, although I'd love to talk more about this. I want to talk about how you bring science and metaphysics and what you've learned in India and from Don Miguel Ruiz, how you bring all that together, because I know you've been really deep diving into Dr. Joe Dispenza and bringing his work and intentions. And so that's intriguing to me. This is something that I'm, here at the Growing Edge, really excited about, helping people to really shift and change their life based on who they are at their essence, and bringing, manifesting the life they want based on, some of the things that you've been considering and teaching and working with.
Yeah, thank you. So because I have practiced so many of these modalities myself and had such great success with them, when I work with people one-on-one now, individually, I have an intuitive sense of working as to what might be helpful in that given moment. I'm really keen on the intentional work right now, because I think that for me, one of the metaphysical meanings of original sin is forgetting our true power, forgetting who we are and what we have available to us. And I think now in particular, and maybe it's always been like this, but with the division in people's opinions and what's happening in the outer world, I think the outer world has a very powerful way right now of bringing our attention outside of ourselves and focusing our attention on outer world phenomenon, as opposed to bringing us in to look at what is possible within. And one of the things that I love about Joe Dispenza's work that really helped me, I was always really comfortable and successful with intentions and manifesting. But I noticed that wasn't always the case for everyone. And I became very curious as to why that might be. And I realized that I was naturally doing something that Joe Dispenza clearly defines. And I don't want to quote him, so I'll just give my interpretation and my version of it, that when we write an intention, that intention comes from the pineal gland, which is like kind of right in the back of the skull here. So there are these special exercises and things like that where we can breathe up into that intention, and the thought can activate the the field, the thought, right? It's like an electricity. So that activates the electric part of the electromagnetic field. But we simultaneously have to feel the feelings as if that has already been. So for example, my husband and I, where I feel very comfortable now, we live on a quinta, which means a farm. And we wanted a large enough home where we could have a guest home. I needed to be on the ground. I didn't want to be in an apartment building. And I wanted to have somebody else take care of the quinta, that we didn't have that responsibility. I wanted to be near the beach and, all of this. So I started an intenders group, and I taught people in the group how to go about these intentions. And I had a long page worth, very specific, of what we wanted: floor to ceiling windows, very, very clear. And feel the feelings. And it's like, oh, I am so joyful. I feel so relaxed and so at ease. And I love hosting our guests. And, I was naturally building the feeling tone in. But what I discovered is many people don't do that. Mm. So the thought activates the electric part of the electromagnetic field, and simultaneously writing the feelings that we have about this as if it's already happening in the present tense, right? That the heart, that actually activates the magnetic field. And research and science has proven now that one without the other doesn't really work. And so what I was realizing is that many people were writing intentions from a place of despair. So they were affirming something verbally or in writing that they weren't feeling, and weren't really connecting, weren't connecting the two there. So that's extremely important. And what I feel passionate about is to activate this within as many people as we possibly can, because this is really the time now to revolutionize, I think, the evolution of our own consciousness. Because this is a time where we are not victim at any time. But this is a time where I feel it more strongly, where we are not victims of the outer world. We have the ability to imagine and create the world that we want. And in the electromagnetic field, in the quantum field, what researchers discovered is that what we're looking for is what appears. Now, that sounds like a very simple statement, but that is actually extremely profound. And, Michael Beckwith talks about walking around in a spacesuit, like of our own environment that we create. And it's absolutely true. And we have to have the awareness of that. So with the intenders groups, it's important for individuals to recognize that they can intend and manifest an experience for their own personal life. But my intention, the greater intention, is to carry that out further for our loved ones. We can't change people, but we can shift the way we see people. And if I am able to see somebody who I may have had a dislike or a judgment about, if I can see them for their essence, then they're being seen differently, and they have the opportunity to respond differently. And I could talk about this for a very long time, but I think that is the real essence and the gift and the possibility. And I think now is the time, because cracks are happening, foundations around the world and different governments are cracking, and that'll either be filled with like extremists, or it will be filled with ordinary people like us who are able to fill that with a brand new vision.
Yeah, I agree. I think people like you and me at our age have been interested in self-development and understanding metaphysics, and how to vision and how to manifest, and this is the perfect time for people like us to offer or share what we know, and we've been training for this. And we're here at the very green growing edge of our own becoming. And as you're sharing that, I'm thinking of something I've heard Michael Beckwith say many times, which is you can't have what you're not in consciousness.
Exactly.
And so, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza with helping us to understand the science of, what's going on in the brain when we're in let's say, a negative space or a negative mindset and heart set, as opposed to a positive or visioning or holding in mind what it is we want and how that would feel. Like this is the new normal. I know it's not normal all the time everywhere at the moment, but I feel like this is the next evolutionary step in human consciousness, is to understand how much we impact our fields, the quantum field, and how easy it is. We just haven't been, it's not been our conditioning. It isn't something, I mean, that's not to say there weren't ancient ancestors doing this, because there were. This mystery, this wonderful capability has been put into the secret files of life and have been taken away from mainstream, and now it's time for it to come on board again.
Absolutely. And I think it can be evolutionary and really change the world. I truly believe that with every fiber of my being. And I always tell my clients or people who sign up for programs, I'm like, don't believe me. Don't take my word on anything. Just have your own experience, become your own testimonial. And I've had people in these groups where, this will never happen, that can never happen. And then within a week or two, it's
happened,
unfolded. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's a great passion that I have right now. And I feel like if we can get as many people, to consider this, that we can really experience a great change.
Yeah. So we're right here at the end of the hour. I can't believe it. How can people get in touch with you? And what is one thing you would like to share with our audience today? What's on the edge of your mind and the edge of your heart right now?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to not be discouraged. If you're experiencing something that you would like to be different, look at this as an opportunity. And I think it's so simple. Flip it. Just flip. It doesn't matter if you're feeling a little anxiety about a little thing, or you don't even know what it is about, or you would really like to have a different experience. Take the thing that you are feeling uncomfortable with, flip it, write down a very simple intention that is the opposite of what is happening. And of course, present tense as if it already is, and assign it feelings and allow yourself just to get into that feeling tone and feel that. Maybe set your timer for 10 minutes and just allow yourself to feel as if you were having that experience already with those feelings. And just play with that, test that. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised if you sincerely do that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Denise, thank you so much for being here today. I would love to have you back on and maybe connect with some of our loved ones that have left this physical realm for now. And yeah, thank you. I love you.
Yes, I love you too. And you can reach me just at Denise Dolan, Denise at DeniseDolan.com or DeniseDolan.com. Yeah, email. So
beautiful. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here today. And I'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Ellie. Thank you to all the viewers. Lots of love. All right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.